shared with you earlier this week that I had to pay a parking ticket in Springfield. We haven't been plugging the meters on street parking since the beginning of the pandemic, when they essentially lifted that, saying, hey, you don't have to pay to park in city of Springfield streets. However, that did not take away the time limits. I was parked outside the Capitol, running in to take care of some news coverage, and didn't plug the meter. It wouldn't have mattered if I did. I extended my stay at that particular spot. I think it was like a 2-hour spot, and I was at the Capitol for 4 or 5 hours or so. So I got a $10 ticket, and that ticket is the first fine that I've had to pay in quite some time. Several years ago, gosh, I had fines and fees that were stacking up from parking tickets. I've probably paid, $50 in parking tickets and whatnot. And even, I would have some late fees that were tacked on to some of those. But that was decades ago. Not that long, but regardless, I've paid my fair share of fines and fees. What about you? What are some of the fines and fees you've had to pay? There's everything from, the parking situation to maybe you had to pay a fee for filing for a construction permit. I've had to do that recently with some stuff I'm doing around the house. But a new report out shows just how much fines and fees are being paid all across the country, and in particular how Illinois seems to be topping the list here when it comes to fines and fees that are ultimately being paid by individuals to municipalities, to counties, and the like. So what's the latest here when it comes to fines and fees? We'll get this pulled up for you. Study shows that Illinois is the second worst for fines and fees. And what is the takeaway of just how much is being paid for with your fines and fees? So we'll go to this story here and take a look as we get this put together from the Reason Foundation. They found that Illinois is the second highest in the nation when it comes to paying fines and fees, about $50 per resident in 2020. That's compared to less than $3 per resident in Kentucky. So we've got analysis being done. Vittorio Natasi is Director of Criminal Justice Policy with Reason Foundation, and they said that this is a problem.
In Illinois, local governments retain a fairly substantial portion of the revenue generated by citations and traffic tickets within that jurisdiction.
And he goes on to talk about the impact of these fines and fees.
So fees are a revenue-generating mechanism, whereas fines, sort of in their intended use, are an alternative to more severe forms of punishment.
So per capita, Illinois charging about $50 per person in fines and fees for a total of $641 million collected. That's just behind New York. So New York has the most fines and fees at about nearly $70. The U.S. average is $27. So you can see Illinois obviously having a lot of fines and fees that we have to pay. But what's interesting also is this report breaks down which cities in the state of Illinois have some of the highest fines and fees. And these include areas where the Reason Foundation highlights can be considered kind of like speed traps, right? Where you might be going a little fast in a community and, they've got law enforcement there ready to go and give you that ticket. Again, here's the Reason Foundation.
Part of why Illinois probably ranks so highly is just because local governments are able to retain a fair amount of the fine revenue they generate.
Now, looking at some of the local governments from the report, and kudos to my colleague Kevin Bessler, he broke down some of the numbers from that Reason report. It says some of the Illinois communities highlighted: Cave in Rock, where fines and fees make up over 26% of the village's revenue, or $128 per resident. In Genoa, fines and fees amount to 14.2% of the town's revenue, or $128 per person. In North Pekin, fines and fees make up around 16% of the village's revenue, or $166 per resident. The analysis also showed 176 nationwide governments derived around 20% or more of their revenue from fines and fees. That's a lot of fines and fees. If a government is driving their revenue through fines and fees, you got to ask, well, are they just, too heavy-handed when it comes to fines and fees? Are they inflating their budgets because they saw a cash cow from the fines and fees, or are tax revenues not enough, so they're looking at enforcing more and getting more fines and fees? These types of things obviously can lead to a whole host of other issues, especially when it comes to individuals having fines and fees stack up and then getting late fees stacked on top of that. You then get issues dealing with the potential of having to file bankruptcy, and then maybe not being able to get a loan because you can't show that your credit's good because you got all these fines and fees stacking up. Then you can't get a car, so you can see how just it starts compounding and making things a little tenuous for the average resident. But Illinois, second on the list from the Reason Foundation when it comes to fines and fees, $50 per resident, just behind New York. The national average, $27 per person. But in Illinois, some of the communities, Cave and Rock, Chenoa, and North Pekin, having some of the highest per capita fines and fees. It's now 8 o'clock.
From the Fly SPI